All right, hello YouTube. So this is the first of a series of videos I'm gonna do, just going through the different builds that I have, my different UAV drone DIY builds that I've made up. So this is the first one. It's the model is based off of a C1 chaser, so it's a foam plane, but I've obviously modified it with a HD video streaming kit, along with some other electronics, to be able to fly live HD streamed video to a VR style goggle headset and get first person FPV view while I'm flying. So I'm just going to briefly go through all the electronics, the build and whatnot, and my thoughts on why I did things, what I used, and so on and so forth. So I'll start from the beginning. I'll start from the top basically. So obviously with my drones, with my UAVs, I do like to stylize them sometimes. So I put a car theme on my one, so it looks like a Grand Touring or a BTCC kind of car for driving and whatnot, because I grew up with cars and stuff. So just to give it some style. But anyways, down to the technical side. So if you see here in the front, I have a camera. So I'm using a Cadex Walksnail video system. So in the front, I've modified it so that it has the HD Pro camera, and I picked this camera because it works really well in low light conditions. So because here where I live, the weather is it's pretty much winter 3 times during the year, throughout the 3 seasons. So we don't really get much sunlight, and yeah, so when it gets to the winter times, I can fly a lot longer, because it can handle the low light conditions when it comes a lot earlier. And if you see further inside, actually 1 second, let me just. So if we look onto the side here, if it just focuses, I have it connected to the standoffs. So this allows me to swivel the nose up and down. I have got it tightened quite a bit, but it allows me to swivel it up and down. And I can, just so that when it crashes, a lot of the force isn't really just on the camera and then it just pops off. It will now like bump upwards and whatnot, and it also gives me control over the angle and stuff. So yeah, that's how I've done that. Additionally, here you can see I have a pitot tube. So connected on the inside, I will show, is connected to an airspeed sensor. And here it gets, clear airflow, so there shouldn't be any issues. And alongside the car theme, I have 2 headlights. So yeah, they're just warm 12-volt LED lights, which I have, which are connected to a switch and obviously turn on. I have the camera poking out a bit further because before, when I did this, if you had it too flushed in, the lights would give a flaring effect on the lens, especially during low light conditions. So if you have the camera just a bit further out, it mitigates that problem. So yeah. So moving on, we have here, I have a Walksnail version 1 VTX, and I had a friend 3D print this case standoff thingy, to a holder basically, just to hold it in place, and I recessed it into the lid of the fuselage basically. That way it gets direct airflow and it stays cool and collected. And the antennas I'm using on this one are Luminaire Axis 2s, double axes. So these give a good dB of 4.7 dB. So, plenty of range. They say these are the best ones. So, that's what I went for. I wanted to get the best when it comes to antennas, especially when it either for video or RC control. I invest, like, that's where I invest the most of my money. I never go cheap, because the video links or the radio links, the RF links in general, in my opinion, are the most important. A bad video link or bad control link is just going to give you a bad day and more susceptible to crashes. So I'm going to pop up the hood and we'll see what's inside. So underneath, you can see I have a fan. So this is the fan from the Walksnail GT series, and it actually fits like perfectly into the holes. So with the way I have it set up, I have some extension pigtails, SMA to UFL connectors that are connected to some metal washers, and then I have them screwed in. So the washers are glued, but the connectors are just, you know, screwed in, so they can be easily removed if need be. And I have a fan here, which is connected to a switch. You know, it's a wiring mess, but it's connected to a switch, which obviously it turns on when the VTX also turns on. So there's cooling underneath. This actually helps. It's very useful when I'm doing bench testing and I haven't got, you know, direct airflow, especially when it's like flying. So that's what I have it there for. And it does keep the VTX cool enough for bench testing, and it doesn't overheat. So yeah, that's good. And then moving down, so here you can see the pitot tube, more of it. So it's really just flushed in and in place, but it's not glued in place, so it can be moved back and forth if need be. So in the event of a crash, you know, it's not going to bend, you know, it should just push right back inside and whatnot, so that it's reusable. But, you know, I don't design these things to crash, I design them to fly and land properly. And here is a bag of screws, because this particular version of the C1 Chaser is a newer version, which has it's detachable. So it's you can connect in some little screws, and it can be broken down into a small bag, which I have for this model. So yeah, so moving on to the rest of the build. So we have, so it's just a series of wire cables connecting to the switch and to the VTX. Here I'm pretty sure this is a switch for the lights, I think, just to turn them on and off. In here, if I can just get it, because of the way this, I'm holding the camera. In here, I think, if it just focuses, yeah. So here's the airspeed sensor, and I only have the top one connected, the active tubing. I don't have the static. And I learned from, I think it was one of Painless 360's videos where he was interviewing the shop owner of 3DXR. They said that when it comes to the static reading of the tube, it's better for it to take the ambient reading of the inside of the fuselage to give more accurate readings, rather than taking it directly from, you know, the static, you know, this, if I just move out of the way, this wire, the static one here just gives more accurate readings basically. So I've adopted that method into my engineering and build. Battery, so here is an old, very, very old, but still functional, Multi-Star 5200 milliamps 4S battery. But I typically use this for when I just want to thrash around. I'm not really bothered about efficiency. When I am bothered about efficiency, I have these. So these are some custom DIY 4S 9600 milliamp hour packs that are made from lithium ion cells, 221-700 lithium ion cells. So that's a 4S 2P. I think the single cells are 4800. So that gives me, and then again, that produces 20 amps, so more than enough for this plane. Because with the setup, I'll get onto it later on about how much amps and efficiency it uses. But yeah, so moving on to the actual main area. So the flight controller I'm using a Maytech F405 Wing version 2. It gets the job done. It's running iNav 8. I know there's some problems people have been talking about with iNav 8, but I haven't really had any issues. I learnt about them. I did the changes that I needed to for the stability and whatnot, and it's working fine, so I'm not too fussed. Launching, I mean, all that stuff, no issues. So here I have a capacitor to help with voltage spikes, and I have that connected to the battery leads, well, the ESC leads more specifically, because that's where you would want them to be. Here I have a buzzer, standalone. It's connected to the flight controller, so I can control it from my radio, but at the same time, when the plane isn't active, it starts beeping on its own, or when it's disconnected. Running ELRS, so with my setup, I have both 2.4 and 868 running. So this is a 2.4 Maytech antenna diversity receiver. So I have one receiver connected here, one antenna connected over here, which isn't really the active one. The active one is this one here, which is a dipole. I'm using a Pro Drone dipole antenna recessed into the stabilizer fins. And in here, I haven't changed it yet, but inside here is it's a TBS Crossfire, but it will be changed to a Beta FPV Nano RX. But for the meantime, I haven't changed it. And how I connect it, I use this JST connector, so it's just plug and play. I have them connected to different UARTs, but you simply just disconnect this and then just plug this in to the female, and then that's it, because they're both running the TBS protocol, so it makes swapping seamless. Yeah, more continuing on the 868 on the 868 receiver. So there was some issues I was dealing with, whereby because it was running 500 milliwatts for telemetry power, it was actually causing the flight controller to freeze, just because of the amount of RF power that was causing. Because the antenna that I'm using for my 868 is actually the what's it called? It's the VAS X-Fire Pro. It's a flat it's a flat antenna. So I have it underneath here. If I just bear with me. So I have it underneath here. So I've taped it and whatnot, but you can see the outlines of the antenna underneath. So because of the interference that it was causing due to the high milliwatts it was emitting, I wasn't able to, use it. So I rectified it by creating a Faraday cage. So underneath the antenna, I have a tape. I have a tape. I've taped. I have a strip of copper tape, and I've soldered a ground cable directly to the flight controller. So that way it blocks out any and all RF signal from the antenna going directly to the flight controller, because the antenna is directly underneath the flight controller. So that helped block the signal, but at the same time it still allows, because the antenna is underneath the plane, it still allows my radio to to send signals, and the antenna is able to receive the signals without any issues or drop in the signal quality or link quality. You know, it works perfectly fine. So that's how I solved that issue. But that was an issue specifically with the TBS Crossfire. The new receiver that I'm going to put in, which is ELRS, is less power, so I probably won't need it, but I'll still keep it anyways as insurance, just in case that issue arises. The reason why I use the Nextfire Pro as well is because I wanted it to be flat and streamlined, the profile of the plane, and every other antenna, like a dipole, you know, it would require me to cut more and maybe recess it here, and I didn't like that. So I like the idea that, you know, it would be flat underneath, so I can get better reception. But also, because it's cross-polarized, you can have it flat and it will still function as if it was horizontal as well. So best of both worlds. It was the most ideal antenna for what I needed. Okay, so and then additional stuff. So I have a strobe light here, and I've removed the strobe, and I've just extended it with some extra wire, you know, just when I'm flying at night. Hooked it up to the arm switch, so when the plane is armed, the light will go off. Just another indicator. I have a glitch buster. I have a glitch buster capacitor connected to the servo rail, because my the fan and the VTX are both powered by the servo rail. I don't think it's necessary, but it's just, I just go a bit overkill on the insurance, just to make sure that everything runs smooth and I don't have any issues in the air. ESC wise, I'm using a Hack RC 5S 35 amp ESC running BLA 32, and this one actually is the proper BLA 32, not the test firmware. And I have a low ESR capacitor connected to it as well. So that's all just recessed at the back. And the powertrain wise as well, I'm using a T-Motor AS 2312 1150 kV motor, swinging a what is this? I think it's an 8x7. Yeah, this is an 8x7 inch aeronaut folding props. And all in total, maxed out, this thing pulls 10 amps. So that's why I decided to use XT30 connectors instead of XT60s, because it only pulls 10 amps max, you know, hardly anything. That's at full beans on the bench. So in the air, I know for a fact it's gonna pull a lot less, especially at cruise speed. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole build. Oh, I forgot that it also has LEDs as well, so you can't see it now. I haven't turned it on, but there are some LED strips at the back, which I connected to the LED pads. So these glow red, and it has a really cool effect, like a neon effect. In fact, I can probably, let me just turn it on. So yeah, here's the lights on. So it has a bit of a flickering effect, but that's because I've connected it to the LEDs pad on the flight controller instead of like a proper power source. So that's that side, and then here's the front lights. So yeah, it's just a pretty cool effect. I thought I'd put it on because it's based off of a voxel, and voxels aren't really known to like work properly. I kind of don't mind the kind of dated flickering effect, but yeah. So that's the model. So I'll just turn that off. And yeah, that's pretty much the build. Servos are just some digital Emax servos, standard, pretty much, because you know they work, they do the job. They're not really, I've never really had one ever fail. So yeah, that's pretty much that. So yeah, this is my C1. This is the build that I typically use for, you know, scouting. I call it Storm Chaser because typically I use it for like reconnaissance missions or, you know, really dangerous missions. Because it's the most I'd say reliable build of my fleet. But yeah, stay tuned for the other build videos. Yeah, have a good one.